Discover 7 incredible fruits to transform your strength after 60. The hidden secrets revealed. Frank stared out the window, watching the leaves sway in the gentle breeze. He used to relish moments like these, sipping coffee with his wife, their laughter intertwining with the sounds of the world. Now, the silence pressed down, heavy and suffocating. At 64, after years of dedicated teaching, he felt cast aside, like a forgotten book gathering dust on a shelf. The lessons on Shakespeare and calculus faded, replaced with the echoes of his wife's comforting voice, which reminded him of every glorious meal ever shared. The world kept spinning, yet Frank felt anchored, marooned by grief. Lily, his bright and vivacious granddaughter, was his only lifeline in this tempest of loneliness, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was a burden. Time passed slowly, and with a milestone birthday looming on the horizon, his fears expanded. What would he become? Would he merely drift into obscurity? Staring at the well-worn photograph of his wife on the mantel, he breathed in the residual sense of her cooking: cinnamon, baked bread, love. Yet even that memory dulled, overshadowed by the reality of his desolate days. Discovering strength is more than physical, she had said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm as she dove into her studies of nutrition. Frank admired her passion, but he felt a mix of pride and despair. Could fruits really remedy the emptiness within him, the emotional void she hadn't experienced yet? He hesitated to believe that bright colors and health trends could lift the weight of mourning. The ache in his chest was insurmountable, as was the knowledge that while he educated generations, he couldn't overcome his own heartache. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days passed and the health fair approached, bringing with it a surge of dread. The heavens opened with a spectacular blue, and it was on this splendid Saturday that Lily bounded into his home, notes in hand and determination in her stride. Her excitement was palpable, her embrace a balm to his aching spirit. But the glow dimmed quickly upon arriving at the health fair, where an arrogant wellness guru took center stage, scoffing at Frank's traditional lifestyle. The condescending laughter of the crowd settled in his chest like daggers. Resentment flared within him, igniting a fire he thought snuffed out by grief.
He realized then that he no longer wanted to be the silent witness to mockery. As Frank mulled over those cutting remarks, doubts shadowed him, twisting deeper. Would anyone hear him when the moment came? Was reclaiming his dignity even possible? Anxiety clenched at his gut. The notion of standing against a public figure felt absurd, almost laughable. Yet desperation clawed at his insides, pushing him forward. His own narrative loomed larger than life, tensions building within him, as he faced the overwhelming fear of becoming a mere voice lost in the din of laughter that mocked him. Would he stand up, or would he remain hidden in the shadows? The pivotal moment awaited, an unanswered question that hung heavy in the air, charging the space around him with a haunting uncertainty. The noise of the crowd thrummed through Frank's chest as he watched the wellness guru bask in the adoration of the audience. Each mocking word aimed at tradition sliced through his already raw nerves, igniting a fierce impulse to scream out, to defend not just himself, but the countless seniors who felt marginalized in a world so obsessed with novelty. The air was thick with condescension, yet in that tension coiled something unexpected, a spark of determination. He shifted nervously, his hands fidgeting with the hem of his jacket. The myriad of colorful fruits emblazoned on the promotional banners around them mocked the gray uncertainty he felt within. What did he have to offer in this sea of youthful exuberance and self-proclaimed wisdom? What could a retired teacher do? But it was that very thought that threatened to choke him. Silently, he commanded himself to look deeper. Behind every thought of inadequacy lay the memory of decades spent nurturing young minds, of countless students whose lives he had impacted. Somehow, he needed to bridge that past with his present loneliness. The enormity of his responsibility dawned on him. A mentor could not simply fade into obscurity. He owed it to himself and to those he had inspired to fight against becoming a relic. In that moment of realization, he felt a shift within him.
The momentary doubts still whispering in his ears began to diminish as he summoned the familiar rhythms of classroom debates, the intellectual jousts that had once filled his life with purpose. There was a time when he stood tall in front of eager minds, dissecting Shakespeare with the same fervor that the guru now held for the latest wellness trends. The juxtaposition of their passions, the analytical heart of literature against the superficial appeal of health fads, began to fuel his resolve. The thought of standing against the wellness guru solidified his intention. It was not merely about defending his lifestyle, but about reclaiming his voice. Frank felt the blood quicken in his veins. He could feel the strength of his convictions surging back to life. Perhaps those so-called secrets to strength were not just about kale and acai.
Maybe wisdom derived from experience was the nutrient that fortified his newfound purpose. Waving off Lily's concerned glances, he stepped forward, an impulse breaking the borders of his previous hesitation. The stage where the guru effused hollow vigor became the arena for his thoughts to collide with the fiat of the moment. With a firm grip on the microphone, he delivered a careful yet impassioned manifesto of truth, a beacon of authenticity against the hollow declarations resonating through the tent. He spoke of knowledge gained through time, of the importance of emotional strength, the resilience that comes through enduring life's tribulations. For the first time, the eyes of the crowd flickered towards him, captivated by the fervor of his defense. True strength, he urged, is born not only from body, but from heart, from experiences that mold us throughout our lives. And with each word, he felt the weight of solitude lifting as the crowd leaned in. But like a climactic note in a tense musical score, a shadow fell across the stage as the guru, affronted, approached. The moment escalated into a direct confrontation, and Frank's resolve was put to the ultimate test. Would his voice overpower the authority of pretense, or would he find himself swallowed whole in the echo of mockery once more? The time had come to face not just the guru, but everything he had feared since that heartbreaking silence descended upon him. The echo of Frank's voice reverberated against the tension crackling in the air, merging with the hushed murmurs of disbelief from the crowd. He felt the ground beneath him shift as the wellness guru stepped closer, his disdain palpable. The energy of the room morphed from curiosity to a charged battlefield where confidence met disdain head-on. "Who are you to speak of experience?" the guru challenged, a smirk curling on his lips. "Your glory days are over. It's time for the new, the hip, the fresh." The audience stirred, some in agreement, while others appeared divided, curiosity piqued. This confrontation had the potential to either lift him or pull him down into oblivion. Frank's heart raced, but beneath the anxiety, a steely resolve crystallized. "I understand the desire for novelty," he countered, keeping his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "But longevity isn't merely an extension of youth. It's about living a life infused with lessons learned, connections made, and wisdom earned." The crowd's eyes darted between them, the air thick with anticipation. Frank embraced the moment, escalating his conviction. "You may have followers who bask in the fruit of your sales pitches, but I stand for those who feel overlooked. There's strength in our shared narratives, in the struggles that shape who we are." Taking a calculated breath, he shifted his focus. In his mind, he pictured his classroom, his students' eager faces, their questions filled with wonder, the debates that brightened their eyes.
As he spoke, he tapped into the essence of what made him a teacher. What use is strength if it lacks empathy? What's the value of fitness when it sidelines the wisdom forged through experience? The crowd began to respond, heads nodding. It was subtle at first, a few murmurs of encouragement popping up like hidden cracks breaking through a concrete facade. Frank's pulse quickened further, emboldened by the glimmer of hope igniting among them. "Oh, here comes the aging teacher preaching morality," the guru snapped back, attempting to derail Frank's momentum with sarcasm. "What's next? Lessons from the past that no one cares about?" Frank felt the sting of mockery, and for a brief moment, doubt clawed at his heart. Still, he wouldn't back down. "Let me tell you what no one tells you about aging. It isn't simply a series of years piled on top of one another. It's an evolving dialogue between our minds and bodies. Survival, and more importantly, thriving, means understanding and valuing that dialogue." With each word, Frank felt reawakened, a sense of ownership reclaiming territory long abandoned. The resilience of his students' growth swiftly turned into a master key, unlocking the door to a path he had thought barred forever. The truth surged in him. He had once inspired others to think critically, and perhaps it was time to inspire himself. As the exchange continued, the crowd swelled with anticipation. Frank sensed a shift, a nose of contention evolving into contemplation. Could this be his chance to ignite change, to challenge a narrative that boiled down to transactions made under the guise of self-improvement?
A glimmer of recognition ignited in some of the audience members, and he could almost feel them leaning into the conversation as it unfolded. This was not simply about him. It was about reclaiming lost voices, igniting a movement of authenticity that valued lived experience, a fight against the superficial that so often crowded out the profound. Just as he felt a wave of momentum surge within him, the guru's voice blasted through the tension. "Your time is shifting into irrelevance, old man, but the youth has the future. You're just holding on to the past." Frank tightened his grip on the microphone, a storm of emotion swirling within him. He knew he had to decide quickly, not just how to maintain the upper hand, but how to connect a legacy to a future that had seemed out of reach for so long. The audience, now firmly divided, awaited a resolution. The stakes heightened in that electrifying atmosphere. Frank sensed that this was not merely a confrontation with the guru, but a reckoning with every doubt and every fear he had allowed to fester. It was a moment of redemption, where he had to evolve or retreat into the shadows once more. The crowd was watching as he prepared to speak again, words swirling in his mind like confetti caught in a whirlwind.
The moment to address the painful truths about aging was approaching, but would it be enough to vanquish the specter of irrelevance that loomed large? Frank's breath hitched, a fleeting moment of silence enveloping him as he steadied his focus. The crowd's eyes, their expressions a mix of expectation and doubt, pierced through his hesitation. He was standing on the cusp of transformation, the awakened part of him eager to break free from the encasements of fear and inertia. His grip on the microphone was firm, yet trembling, such a stark contrast to the confidence he had just reclaimed. In that flickering moment, one thought emerged as crystalline clarity. This was about more than just winning an argument against a superficial image. It was about redefining his purpose in the ever-evolving narrative of his life. If he was going to resonate with the audience, he had to be raw, genuine, and unyielding. "Each passing year teaches us something invaluable," he began, his voice steadying as he found rhythm in his cadence. "Aging is not merely a countdown, it is an accumulation of insights. Wisdom isn't measured in youth, but in understanding the cycles of life, navigating failures, and yet still finding the courage to rise each time we fall." A soft murmur rippled through the audience, signaling that he was bypassing the noise to reach their hearts. Some faces softened as they began to recognize their struggles mirrored in his words. Perhaps there was a kind of power in the vulnerability he was offering, an invitation to reflect on their own challenges instead of dismissing them in the name of those fleeting, shiny promises of youth. "Consider for a moment," he urged, his brow furrowing with earnestness, "how often we are sold the idea that happiness exists in a perfect body, a perfect routine, or a glowing complexion. But what if true strength is rooted in our ability to adapt, to mold ourselves with each lesson learned?" He was cooking now, the audience churning like the storm inside him. The resonance of his thoughts, how they echoed into the world, felt like the sparks of a quiet revolution. Nevertheless, he knew he was not immune to the challenges of the present moment. The guru remained an indelible threat to his voice, a reminder of the fragility of acceptance, particularly in a world obsessed with vanity. Frank stole a glance at the guru, who stood defiantly, arms crossed, a mask of disbelief etched across his face. This, however, was not the time for distractions. He had work to do. He had people to empower. "Strength is not devoid of hardship," Frank insisted, his voice rising, emboldened by his convictions. "Think of the triumph in resilience. Every scar tells a story, and every story is a testament to survival." The energy of the room shifted, crackling with a newfound urgency. Heads nodded more vigorously. It felt as if layers of pretense were being peeled away, revealing a myriad of experiences and hearts ready to engage in a deeper dialogue. Frank noticed individuals leaning forward, hanging on to his every word. These weren't just passive listeners. They were participants in their own lives, aching for validity. The stakes, for them and for him, had morphed into something profound. Imagine reclaiming your narrative instead of adhering to someone else's standard. It requires courage, yes, but it also requires community, the understanding that our struggles and victories are interconnected. I'm not here to deny the appeal of fresh perspectives, but to remind you that strength fortified with empathy and understanding transcends time. The applause began as subdued claps, hesitant yet growing, reverberating like a heart ready to break free from apathy. But just as he was about to bask in the warmth of their response,
the guru unleashed an unexpected retort. Emotional rhetoric won't stand against progress. The market doesn't lie. Yield to the seasoned or drown in the past. Frank's insides bristled with indignation, a potent cocktail of anger and determination surging through him. The gravity of the moment shifted again. He was now faced with a dilemma: to entice further engagement with vulnerability, or to fortify his stance with the conviction that he would no longer allow others to dictate his worth. The audience's murmurs intensified, drawing on their collective experience. Did they yearn for a watered-down narrative, or could they be inspired to aspire for more? Suddenly, he realized that this confrontation had wrought a new realization in him. Change did not come from blindly accepting new forms or modes. It arose from battling through each challenge and constructing a bridge with every experience lived. For the first time in years, the path ahead felt unearthing and bright. As he prepared to unleash the final words that would either cement his thoughts or escalate the conflict, he found himself staring deeply at the guru's sneering expression. He wasn't merely confronting a rival. He was facing his deepest fear, the notion of becoming irrelevant. With the time for resolution approaching, Frank made a choice. It was time to stand still, align with his truth, and ignite a transformation within him, ready to dive headfirst into the unknown. The audience hung on the precipice of his final message, but beneath it all, the surrounding tension escalated. This was not simply a fight for recognition. It was the onset of a metamorphosis. "I invite you all," he stated with unwavering intensity, "to redefine what it means to move forward and shape your narrative. Because I choose to stand firmly today. But the question remains, are you ready to face what lies beyond?" The audience held its breath, a collective weight resting on Frank's shoulders. The guru's scornful glare seemed to cut deeper as he prepared his summation.
But as Frank took a moment to breathe, a strange calm washed over him, grounding the chaos swirling like a tempest within. What if this confrontation wasn't about silencing the opposition, but rather amplifying a voice that had long been muffled? "I'm not afraid of the past, I'm emboldened by it," he declared, feeling the warmth of his resolve ignite. The words erupted from him, powered by a conviction forged through years of doubt and introspection. The challenge he faced wasn't just about discrediting the guru, it was about stepping into an arena where authenticity thrived over the shallow allure of facade. Around him, flickers of recognition ignited, among faces reflecting the uncertainty that had once paralyzed him. He adjusted the microphone and reached deeper. We've often been taught to wear masks, to fit into molds that are far too narrow for the complexities of who we are. But I stand before you not to cast blame, but to illuminate a path towards a more expansive existence, one that embraces every wrinkle and scar as proof of your journey. The applause swelled, louder this time, infused with a raw energy that danced around the room like electricity. It was this very energy that had eluded him for so long, and now, here it was, vibrant and alive. Yet within the surge of affirmation, doubt still lurked. Did they truly understand? With every beat of his heart, Frank understood that true strength wasn't about erasing one's past, but cherishing it, embracing both the triumphs and the failures that crafted identity. To dismiss our experiences is to deny the core of our humanity. Let our stories resonate louder than any superficial narrative. The guru's demeanor faltered just for a second as his facade cracked. Frank pressed on, seizing the moment. Change requires bravery, yes, but it also nurtures acceptance. Stand with me as we reclaim our narratives, not as victims of time, but as champions of our life stories. A ripple of applause echoed through the room, now more cohesive, a united crescendo ready to challenge the expectations that had been cast upon them. In that instant, Frank knew he was no longer just an audience member lending his voice to the cause. He was spearheading a movement within himself and possibly within others. Together, we can redefine success, not as an elusive image of perfection, but rooted in the sacred threads of experience. What we have to gain is a renewed sense of purpose that will transcend all vacuous metrics of worth. The guru's refusal to yield fueled Frank's momentum. The market may offer shiny things seeking to distract us, but real growth and perspective bloom from the inside, not from a catalog of hollow measures.
It was exhilarating. Frank embraced the uncertainty that flitted at the edge of his awareness. Maybe the crowd wasn't just on the verge of a realization. They were teetering into the vastness of possibility.
At that moment, he felt the cracks in his own self-doubt begin to mend as he found his footing in this intimate connection. And then he delivered it, a promise steeped in his own redemption. I choose to be more than my past, to transform as the seasons change. If you stand with me, I urge you to reflect. Who are we, within ourselves, behind the layers? If we dare to dig deep, we may unearth a treasure trove of wisdom that age cannot tarnish. The applause rolled like thunder, electric, as the crowd responded to his fervor. Yet from the corner of his eye he saw the guru lurking, calculating. Frank had thrust himself into the line of fire, and now there was no turning back. Would he let go of the anchor binding him to uncertainty, or would he cling to the comfort of an old narrative? Frank realized the pivotal juncture he now faced, one more stone on the path to his transformation, or the weight holding him back. As he stepped forward, heart racing, he could feel the collective heartbeat of those present mirroring his own. They were ready for change, but so was he, ready to confront the shadows of dismissive criticism and embolden the gathered voices. With determination surging through him, he declared, "Tonight we set forth on a journey, not just of self-discovery, but of self-liberation. And the question remains, how will we define legacy in the face of doubt?" The audience erupted again, but within the fervor, a whisper of trepidation stirred. What awaited them all on the other side of this chosen path? The tension simmered beneath the surface, an unearthed revelation lingering in the air, poised to unfold. Frank's pulse raced as the applause faded into a murmur, leaving a tangible silence heavy with anticipation. He had tasted the essence of his voice being woven into the fabric of collective action, yet beneath the exhilaration lay a current of unease. The guru's flicker of doubt was not enough to rid him of the looming shadow. Rather, it loomed larger, revealing the depth of Frank's internal conflict. In the aftermath of his declaration, Frank found himself retreating inward, questioning the authenticity of his resolve. Would he truly withstand the scrutiny that was surely coming? As the crowd buzzed with renewed energy, he caught sight of the guru, still exuding an aura of disdain, surrounded by an entourage that thrived on superficiality and quick judgments. He clenched his fists, determination surging through him. It was all too easy to fall prey to skepticism, to second-guess every step forward. But wasn't it precisely the fear of that self-doubt that had fueled his entire journey? It was time to confront it head-on. No more masks. What if, he pondered with intensity, the most significant changes come not from the outside, but from challenging the very voices that echo our insecurities within? This thought crystallized into a resolved clarity. He needed to craft not only a counter-narrative, but a profound redirection within himself. As the audience settled, Frank anchored himself by recapping his own journey, focusing on failures that had once shackled him. Failure wasn't the enemy, it was the facilitator of growth. "There was a time when I would let fear consume my worth," he admitted, drawing their attention with vulnerability. "I let others define success for me. I was lost, drifting between aspirations that did not belong to me. It took me years to unravel the threads of expectation that weren't my own." This confession resonated. He could feel the room shift. He saw it in their eyes, the very human experience of grappling with distorted definitions of self-worth. The guru, simmering with impatience, could not silence this evolving narrative. Frank pressed on, ardently weaving in the ethos of resilience and self-discovery. "And in this journey," he continued, voice steadied, "I discovered the importance of community. Not the community that silences, but one that nurtures honesty, encourages vulnerability, and celebrates individuality. We must rise together, not as faceless entities, but as a chorus of unique voices. What a displacement from package deals of success we've been sold." The applause returned, building each moment until it resonated like a heartbeat. But even amidst it, Frank confronted what lay ahead. Would he need to dismantle the very source of his past to fully embrace this new chapter? The thought swirled. A wave of uncertainty threatened to destabilize him. He took a deep breath. What was required now was action, but not the careless, frenzied type. Strategic, deliberate. Yet he stood at a crossroads. The guru's shadow lingered, managing the recoiling of Frank's newfound confidence and gnawing at his emerging conviction. Ultimately, it called into question a profound truth. Would he allow fear to color his next steps, or would he seize the narrative being spun around him? Frank understood that the moment had come for decisive growth, not only for himself, but for all those ready to join him.
His heart felt heavy yet invigorated as he envisioned a future brimming with authenticity, an unfolding journey toward true legacy. The realization snapped into focus. His voice was a tool, capable of shattering expectations and rising above them. Resolute, he uttered, "The time has come to embrace our stories as shields against the storm of judgment. How will you claim your legacy, not defined by others, but by the sanctity of your journey?" As murmurs of agreement swelled, he caught sight of the guru, brow furrowed, plotting his next move. The tension crackled anew. Frank sensed the confrontation that awaited. Was this the catalyst that would either shatter his momentum or ignite a profound shift? The room hung in suspense, poised for the defining moment that could change everything. What would unfold as the two forces collided in a battle for truth?
With every heartbeat, he yearned for the coming clash, ready to confront not only the guru, but the hidden doubts within himself. The air pulsed thick with the weight of unspoken truths as Frank locked eyes with the guru, who seemed rooted in uncertainty. The applause had washed over him, invigorating yet burdening. It challenged him to rise beyond the expectations that once suffocated his voice. For years, Frank had navigated a labyrinth of external approval, questioning each bend he took. Was he now ready to dismantle the very architecture of his past? A sudden tightness gripped his chest. Doubts surged like tidal waves, crashing against the shore of his resolve. He had built this moment, yet the skepticism that shrouded his mind threatened to unravel it. As he stood on that precipice of challenge, he understood that clarity was not merely about acknowledgement, it was about action. The guru represented not just a rival, but the remnants of every dismissal he had ever faced. Directing his focus back to the audience, he sensed their eagerness, their trust in him as something new, a beacon emerging from the tempest. What he had shared thus far was only the prologue of his narrative. Frank felt the stirrings of a deeper significance. He had weaponized his vulnerabilities, transforming them into a force of authenticity. "Each of us has been told a story about ourselves," he began, his voice rising with conviction. "Some tales are woven from the opinions of others, but we have the power to rewrite our scripts." The intensity of his words ignited a flicker of resonance in the crowd. Frank knew he was unraveling a fundamental truth that lay buried in many hearts, but the guru's steely gaze urged him to be bolder. "What if I told you I am not here to convince you of my journey, but to illuminate your path?" It was a gamble, one that could set him aflame or reduce him to ash. The guru's expression faltered momentarily. It was a crack in his armor, a glimmer of vulnerability he rarely exhibited. Frank seized the opportunity, each word becoming a blade crafted from resolve. "I am flawed, I am human, and I have struggled under the weight of others' expectations." With those admissions, he laid bare the uncomfortable truths he had wrestled with alone for too long. But that struggle was my ally, not my enemy. The room vibrated with the shift in energy. Frank continued, drawing them into the fabric of his experiences. "I discovered that self-acceptance can only blossom when you confront the voices, whether from within or around you, that tell you who you ought to be. It's messy, it's painful, and sometimes it's solitary, but it's essential." As he spoke, Frank could see the transformation in the audience. They were not just listeners, they were participants in his narrative, anchoring their own struggles behind his words. Yet the guru remained, embodying the cynical bastion of everything Frank sought to dismantle.
In that moment, the reality crystallized. This confrontation was more than about ideas. It was a battle against the specter of self-doubt embodied in his antagonist. Facing the guru head-on became imperative. With fervor building inside him, he challenged the guru's investments in conformity and judgment. What power do words hold if they are fueled by fear? What legacy do we leave if we allow others to dictate our worth? Each question landed heavily in the air, and he watched as some in the audience subtly shifted, considering their own truths against the backdrop of his declaration. Frank felt the clasp of a truth nearing. He was ready to unmask this guru, to expose the fallacy of external validation once and for all. The stakes had never been so high. He sensed the culmination of his inner evolution. Yet as he gathered his breath for the impending confrontation, an unmistakable tension stilled the atmosphere. It was a cliffhanger moment, the kind that could propel him toward revelation or retreat him into silence. How would he confront the guru,
And would it unlock or sever the new legitimacy he claimed? With anticipation crackling in the room, the moment felt electric, poised on the threshold of discovery. All choices lay ahead, and Frank stood on the brink, ready to either emerge triumphantly or grapple with the inhibitors of his past. Would he step forward, ready to shatter expectations, or falter under the weight of his deepest fears? The silence was suffocating, an invisible weight that pressed down on Frank as he locked onto the guru's penetrating gaze. Time seemed to stretch, the buzzing excitement of the audience fading into a distant hum, leaving only the two of them in the spotlight's glow. Frank's heart raced. He felt every drop of adrenaline coursing through him, pushing him into a state of razor-sharp focus. "What will you choose?" whispered a voice that felt both foreign and familiar, the echo of his own doubts whispering trepidation in his ear. In that heartbeat of uncertainty lay an authentic challenge, propelling him to re-examine his own desires beyond the requirements of others. Frank's fingers clenched, and he felt the familiar shadows of fear creeping back in, yet he refused to surrender to them. Reimagining his own narrative, he visualized not just standing against the guru, but placing himself alongside the audience he aimed to uplift. They were all on a shared journey of renewal, and their tension mirrored his. If I am authentic, if I am truly real, then I must take this leap, he thought. Something stirred within him. The groundwork of the last few years, the constant reflection, learning, and unearthing of his narrative had brought him to this pivotal moment. "I dare you," Frank said, the intensity of his voice rising to meet the guru's calm exterior. "I dare you to challenge what we accept as necessary truths."
The guru's composure faltered, a muscle in his jaw tightening, revealing a hint of the wall he maintained around his own vulnerabilities. The audience surged, leaning in closer, their collective curiosity amplifying in the soft light. Frank turned his focus back to them, pouring all the power of his rewritten script into the space between. "This is your moment too. Pick up your sword against your fears. We have the right to question who we were told to be and who we want to become." Each word was carefully selected, constructed to resonate with their shared chaos, empowering others to confront their own narratives woven with external threats. He could feel them shifting, hearts racing as they recognized the truth in those words. They weren't simply trapped in their pasts, they held the keys to the doors leading to liberation. With each admission, he was learning not just to speak his truth, but to live it. The act of sharing became a mirror, reflecting the insecurities and aspirations present within the room. "Perhaps the greatest critique of our lives is not the doubts of others," he stated, focusing intently on the guru once more. "It is the silence we impose on ourselves, the permissions we grant to those we fear." A charge of energy surged as the audience nodded, whispers shifting like the rustle of leaves on a windy day. As the intensity of the room thickened, Frank recognized the shift in his own insecurities. What had once manifested as fear now materialized as profound conviction. Every heartbeat radiated with emotion, blossoming from the soil of his experiences. This was not solely about confronting the guru, it was about becoming fully aware of his transformation, of embracing the unsettling discomfort of being truly seen. But even as he spoke, self-doubt lingered just beneath the surface, waiting for an opportunity to claw back into his mind. With the battle lines drawn, Frank prepared to face this duality, his past beliefs versus the man he had wrestled to become. "I know it's terrifying to face ourselves, to claim our narratives," he paused, weighing each word. "But liberation lies in our willingness to face that fear straight on." Almost at that very moment, he steadied his gaze on the guru once more. "Are you willing to abandon the lie that silence is strength?" The air thickened with anticipation. The guru's response lingered as if it could fracture the veil between their shared realities, and Frank braced himself for the answer, a possibility that could redefine everything he had fought for. The path ahead was steep, but he felt the surging pulse of potential in the room, binding him to those who stood quietly alongside. Would the guru respond, collapsing under the weight of authenticity? With each breath, Frank was ready to explore an answer that promised to unveil not just truths about the guru, but also deeper revelations about himself. What new challenges would arise from this moment of confrontation?
Would he unlock not just his own strength, but ignite the hidden power in all those around him? A stillness enveloped the room, stretching like a taut string, every person on edge, anticipating the guru's response. Frank felt as if the air itself crackled with energy, connecting him to each member of the audience. No longer just an orator, he had become a conduit for their fears and aspirations. The moment hung precariously, and as he stared into the guru's eyes, waiting for a sign of acknowledgement or defiance, he felt his heart beat steadily against the uncertainty. The guru shifted slightly, a testament to the tension tightly wound between them. Then, with the grace of someone who had likely wielded silence like a weapon for years, he drew a breath, a deep and deliberate inhalation that seemed to echo in Frank's mind. In that very act, the walls around the guru cracked. "I will not abandon silence," the guru stated, his voice rich with calm, yet laced with resistance. "It is in silence that profound truths lie dormant." Frank's pulse quickened. This was not the concession he had hoped for. It felt more like a challenge. Doubt flickered in his mind like a warning light, urging him to tread carefully. Yet instead of retreating, adrenaline surged, pulling him deeper into the confrontation. "What if this silence is merely a veil?" he pressed, his tone resolute. "What if by clinging to tranquility we are suffocating our potential?" The ripple of murmurs from the audience encouraged him, a powerful reminder that he was not alone in this battle. The audience seemed to hold their breath, grappling with the notion that perhaps silence had ensnared them as much as it had the guru. Frank's resolve strengthened. He realized that this confrontation wasn't merely about the guru or the people surrounding him. It was a testament to his own journey, about reclaiming the narrative that had at times felt elusive. As he observed the shifting expressions in the crowd, he recognized the awakening sparked within them, an acknowledgement of their own silences, fears, and dreams. Perhaps even within the guru's stoicism lay the echoes of unvoiced aspirations. "Silence," he continued, battling back his lingering self-doubt, "can be a refuge, but it can also be a prison when we allow it to dictate who we become." His voice resonated with the honesty of shared struggles, a connection igniting a communal spirit that fostered courage rather than fear. He sensed a change in the guru's posture, the challenge met with flickers of uncertainty. It was a small victory, but Frank knew that he was inching closer to his goal. The truth he had unearthed began to take form, crafted by his own hardships and the resilience he had fostered through each trial. "I dare to believe," Frank said, his voice rising with conviction, "that transformation requires vulnerability, a willingness to voice the unspoken."
What would happen if we embraced our truths instead of hiding behind the guise of calm? The room buzzed with possibility, every person contemplating the weight of those words. Frank was terrified, yet exhilarated by the prospect of defining not just his narrative, but stepping into a new chapter of his life. He had come to fight for others' truths, but now found himself fighting for his own. With a glance at the guru, who appeared more human and less hallowed now, a thought crossed Frank's mind. This confrontation was not merely a matter of strength, it was a bridge to rediscovery. And just as he prepared to pivot into the next statement, something unexpected stirred within him. What if the most significant revelation was still buried beneath the surface? What if accepting new truths meant summoning courage he had never known? He steadied his breath to venture further, ready to unveil layers of complexity both within himself and his opponent. Just as he began to articulate the questions swirling in his mind, the audience leaned in, waiting, their eyes wide with anticipation and a promise of personal transformation. What lurking truths would surface amid this raw, vulnerable exchange? Would he find the strength to unearth the core of his being, or would the weight of doubt pull him under again? Frank stood transformed, feeling the pulsating energy of the crowd around him, tethered now not just to their admiration, but to their shared vulnerabilities. He had come to speak his truth, but in doing so, he had begun a much deeper journey, one that connected him and those present to the core of their own experiences, fears, and aspirations. The tension with the guru had morphed into a catalyst for Frank's awakening. The once daunting figure opposite him was no longer simply an adversary. He stood as a reminder of every voice that had tried to silence Frank, a manifestation of all the doubts he had allowed to flourish unchecked. Now he was ready to dismantle that. "What if silence is not the way to dwell in the truth?" Frank proposed, locking eyes with the guru once again, a fire ignited behind his gaze. "What if we claim our voices instead? What if the past was not a chain binding us to mediocrity, but the key unlocking a reservoir of wisdom that can empower us? Can we redefine who we are and what it means to grow?" The audience began to stir restlessly, the energy becoming electric as they absorbed his words with open hearts.
In the middle of his speech, he felt the atmosphere shift, less like spectators and more like participants in an awakening that pulsated through that very moment. I stand here not merely as a voice of experience, he continued, resolutely embracing his newfound confidence. I stand as proof that our narratives, shaped by sorrow, love, triumph, and defeat, have tremendous value in this rapidly changing world. My years as an educator taught me the power of connection, of being present for each other. We must reclaim that power.
The rousing murmurs of agreement swelled into applause, enveloping him like a warm embrace. Each clap resonated with the truths he had finally articulated, the collective recognition of their own lives that had been drowned beneath the weight of expectations. To mature, he declared, his voice steady and unwavering, is to integrate all of who we are. Each wrinkle tells a story. Each gray hair is a lesson lived. Embrace your past. Don't shy from it. That is where growth begins. His mind raced with clarity, and the memories ebbed and flowed like waves, forcing their way into the recesses of his heart. Far too long had he lingered in limbo, fearing the future rather than fostering the strength he'd cultivated through the years. No more. He would seize the narrative of his life with both hands. Frank was no longer merely a teacher on the sidelines. He had become a symbol of resilience, a champion for those on the brink of realization. Think about this. If we hide behind polished facades that the world demands, we rob ourselves of the richness that comes from authenticity. Real strength emerges from navigating our trials openly, knowing that none of us are alone. He gestured widely, encompassing the room, igniting passion within them. The audience began to nod vigorously, aligning themselves with the momentum ignited by his raw honesty. This was a revolution, a reclaiming of lives stifled under the guise of progress. Let us take a stand together, he urged, heart racing with purpose. Not just for ourselves, but for those who fear their own stories. The world needs our voices, honest, raw, and real. It's time we redefine what it means to be strong, and in that definition, we will find our liberation. The applause erupted like a thunderstorm, shaking the very foundations of doubt that had held him captive for far too long. Frank felt a sobering calm wash over him. For the first time in ages, he stood with purpose, a beacon of clarity in a fog of uncertainty, radiating strength gathered from his past experiences and envisioning the future he would help guide. The guru stood before him, visibly taken aback, the criticism he had wielded now falling flat against Frank's authenticity. The air crackled with the understanding that neither age nor pretense could silence the truth. It would always ascend, demanding to be heard. With that, Frank reached the definitive apex of his journey. Not only had he reclaimed his voice, but found profound fulfillment in simply being. He had bridged the past of a grieving widow to the hopeful present of a man no longer defined solely by grief, but by the legacies he had fostered. I am no longer the man standing here engulfed by shadows, he triumphantly articulated. I am a warrior of my own narrative, a testimony of transformation. This was his moment, the culmination of every fear he had faced, every moment of doubt, now transmuted into a personal victory.
He was not just a figure of nostalgia, but a vibrant incarnation of hope, carrying the stories of countless others who felt lost and confined. As the applause echoed around him, Frank felt solid confidence swell within, an unwelcome, burdensome weight dissipating under the light of collective validation. He had established his position, attained recognition not just as a former educator, but as a powerful advocate for those yearning for authenticity against a tide of uniformity. With eyes gleaming with satisfaction, he embraced the warmth of the crowd, one hand clasped on the microphone like a sword he would wield to protect the integrity of experience. This was not an ending, it was a beginning, the blossoming of his own narrative entwined with those who gathered in that room, hearts aligned toward empowerment. Finally, he stepped back, inviting the crowd to rise alongside him on this journey. Let us redefine success together, celebrate the stories etched by years lived, stand firm against silence, and embrace the orchestra of our truths. The world is waiting, and we are more than prepared to meet it head-on. Frank backed away from the mic, sweat pooling along his brow where the determination had taken root. What would happen next he could hardly imagine, but he welcomed the uncertainty. A vibrant future ready to unfold would mirror the transformation he had undergone. As the crowd roared, he knew this was not only personal growth, but a revolution fueled by shared humanity. A simple truth barely whispered before now stood resilient at the forefront, demanding to be recognized. Now, let me urge you, support this journey.
Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your engagement truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation, and join us in redefining strength. This is your moment to ensure these vital voices continue to rise. Don't wait even one more second to share.